We're standing in front of one of the windows at St. Andrew's Church, one that depicts the resurrection. So Mary has just met the risen Christ. And this is a nice place to start to think about the sixth of the metaphors of the cross we want to think about, called the descent into hell. And with this particular metaphor, we build on the one we just talked about, the one about Christus Victor, that Christ is victorious. But thinks more deeply about what does it mean for him to have be risen from the dead, raised to life again, and what does that mean to the power of hell? In the Apostles' Creed, there is that interesting line, he descended into hell. The early church took this very seriously. More recently, in more recent times, it's not been considered as seriously, but the early church thought about this profoundly and deeply. And it did so on the basis of two passages from Scripture. The most famous of those, in terms of this particular matter, is from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 8 to 10. And Paul writes, "This is why it says, when he ascended on high, he led captives in his train and gave gifts to all." What does he ascended mean, except that he also descended to the lower regions of the earth? And he who descended is the very one who ascended higher than all the heavens in order to fill the whole universe. If you quickly read through that, you sort of think, well, he descended, he became one of us, Jesus Christ became one of us. But there's something deeper going on. Descended here is Paul's talking in the position of his death, that Jesus descended into hell. Jesus went to the place of hell in our world, the hell that exists. He went to that place as a result of death, and in his resurrection, he has defeated the power of death and sin and hell. And those words trip off our lips very easily, because sometimes we think of death as being a sort of a state rather than a power. The early church, early Christians, thought about death as a power that Satan used to hold people in captivity, to hold people in fear. As we live through the middle of COVID-19, maybe we understand much more deeply what the early church thought about when it said the power of death and the freedom and hope that comes in the resurrection. And so with this particular picture that Jesus descended into hell, we have the idea that Jesus went to the place where God is not, where that's what hell is, where God is not. Jesus invaded where God is not and defeated death in his very home and led captives, those who were captive to death, those who were threatened by death, led them to freedom. And so he descended to hell is that he went to the darkest places in our world, the darkest places that we can imagine, and from there brings about resurrection. This speaks not only to the situation that we face with COVID-19, but the situation that we think about in the wake of the Holocaust. In a world where genocide takes place, we have one who went to the darkest places, the deepest places, who went to hell itself. And from there the resurrection speaks. The medieval church thought about this as the harrowing of hell. In other words, the stripping of hell of its power. And so that the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, Jesus goes to the darkest place, and his resurrection defeats the power of death forever and ever. Fits very nicely with what we just talked about in the previous one about Christ as victor, and the power of the resurrection that's unleashed there because he went to death. Thanks be to God that he's been raised to life and that the power of hell has been defeated.